Father Shane Stevens back with us for a second round. Welcome back, Father Shane.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you.
So he enjoyed it so much, he stuck around for a second episode. We actually planned 2 episodes because we often have priests come in to tell their own story of how they got their call to the priesthood, and we had not had Father Stevens do this yet. And I have no idea what your story is. So I'm very interested to hear what we have with you.
Okay.
Will you start? Just tell us a little bit about your family, where you grew up, the kind of basic stuff, if you would.
My family has been in South Dakota since territorial times. My father's family came from Denmark and immigrated here and then settled here. My father graduated from Irwin High School, which is near Lake Preston.
Okay. Doesn't exist anymore, right?
Doesn't exist, and it'd be west of Brookings, west of Arlington, north of Lake Preston. Went to Vietnam in the Navy. After that, 2 years of that, then he worked down in Kansas on a combine crew, and through that he met my mom.
Okay.
So they were actually married in Kansas.
Oh.
And then I was born in Kansas, and then when I was 3, we moved back to South Dakota.
Sure.
We lived in a little town called Hetland, which is just very near Arlington, not much left there. And then Dad took a job driving truck in Sioux Falls.
Okay.
Mom was a homemaker for most of my life growing up until about maybe 5th or 6th grade, and then she started working at Kmart on 12th Street. Again, doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
So we started out at Christ the King, and then when St. Michael's was started, we lived on the west side of the interstate, so we were now part of St. Michael's Parish, founding members of that parish.
Yeah.
So that's where I grew up and received my sacraments.
I didn't know you grew up in Sioux Falls.
Yeah. Went to public school, Hayward Elementary, and then Axtell Park, and then finished at O'Gorman.
Oh, nice. Was that a kind of a big shift from public school to O'Gorman, or no, not really?
Well, it was a tremendous grace for me because I had a couple incidences where I was really bullied in middle school.
Gosh, yeah.
And one day, this young man, who I don't really know where he is, God bless him, he sucker punched me on the bus.
Oh, no.
And I got off, and I had a bloody nose and ended up getting a black eye. And I think it was sometime in March, because it was cold, and I was walking back, and it was kind of like, why did that kid smack me? I don't know what I did. And then on the news that night, there was a story about some of the Lenten observances of the Catholic high school. I was like, Catholic high school? There's a Catholic high school? It's like, I'm Catholic. Why am I going to that high school?
Not there?
And so I went to my parents, and I said, I think I want to go to O'Gorman High School. And my mother wasn't really opposed. My father wasn't Catholic, and he was like, well, that's tuition. How are we going to pay for that and this and that? And I said, I don't know. I'll figure it out. And talk about bold. I went down to St. Michael's Parish, and I said to Susie Ryerson, who was the secretary at the time, I want to see Father Doyle. And she said, well, about what? I said, well, I want to go to the Catholic high school, but I need to talk to a priest to do that. And Father Doyle wasn't in, but Father Simple was. He was the parochial vicar at that time.
Wow.
And I went down the hall to his office, and I poured out my heart to him about why I wanted to go. And he said, if you wanted to go, you can go. So then I started freshman year at O'Gorman and loved it.
Oh, that's awesome.
My classmates were very good to me. The teachers were very good to me. Home life wasn't always easy. My father had a lot of struggles, personal struggles, and so it was a great grace to be able to go there. So, and a great privilege.
Yeah. Did you go to college, or did you go straight to seminary?
So in '92, I graduated from high school. I went to IHM Seminary.
Okay.
In those days, that was the primary college seminary we went to. Bishop Dudley was the bishop at the time, and I still have the letters saying, congratulations, you're going to go to the seminary. And we had, backing up before that, I think I thought about the priesthood for the first time in 2nd grade, because I was preparing for my first Holy Communion, and we were in this small chapel that was used for daily Mass primarily at St. Michael's. And they were showing us the chalices, and they were showing us all the instruments of the Mass and the vestments. And because I was always a very tall boy, they put the alb and the stole and the chasuble on me to kind of model.
Oh, to be the priest.
Yeah,
Sure.
to be the priest.
Sure.
And I was like,
oh boy, did they not know what they were doing,
They did not know. And then I started serving Mass, and really fell in love with the Mass and really just revered our priests. Monsignor Doyle was really someone that I admired, and Father Chuck Simple too. I mean, both of them were the first priests there, so very much loved them. And that went on until about my sophomore year in high school. Father Wensing came as our pastor, and so different but so good, and so supportive of me. We then had a priest by the name of Father Dale Sieverding at that time, and he, God rest his soul, he invited me to go to visit the seminary.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't even know what a seminary is. I don't know what you're talking about, but in the back of my mind, I always kind of thought about the priesthood, but there weren't priests in our family really.
Right.
And, we never missed Mass. We took the faith seriously. My mom wasn't pushing it, and my dad really didn't know. He was a Lutheran, so he's kind of like, whatever. And so I went.
Yeah.
I went to visit the seminary, and I was like, here's this chapel full of guys my age, a little older, same age, and they're praying, and like, what is going on? I came back, and I told then Father Mangan, now Monsignor Mangan, about my trip and about this book I saw the seminarians using, and he said, well, that's the breviary or the morning and evening prayer, Christian prayer, and he got me one.
Wow.
So I started praying morning and evening prayer as a sophomore in high school. My high school job was to clean the chapel, was to vacuum the chapel, to dust the chapel, to organize it. So I think just very early on, I just fell in love with the Mass and what the priests do. The importance of the Mass really became a thing. So I went to the seminary out of high school, 92, 93, and by 93 I was back home. It wasn't a good experience. There was issues in the seminary, and to be honest, academically I probably wasn't as studious as I ought to have been and faithful to that. So they said, well, we'll have you do a pastoral year. And sometimes when you hear pastoral year, it's kind of like, and we're going to let you go, maybe you'll
we're going to phase you out.
We're going to phase you out, discern you out.
Yeah.
And I did that in Vermilion, and then it wasn't a great experience either. And so then it's kind of like, I don't know what to do. So
Did you have an interest in anything else besides priesthood at that time?
No, I really didn't.
So you're like, I got to figure this out.
I got to figure it out. I came home. My parents said, well, you can live with us, but you got to have a job, of course. And I worked at Walmart for 3 years. And 3 years. And it was the best human formation I could have had.
Oh, I believe that.
Because one, I had to grow up, pay my bills, pay taxes, have insurance, all those things that young adults... Be an adult.
Yeah.
My parents were very generous. They let me stay. But I had to pay my own way, and I learned a lot about people. And that was a real great grace. And then the idea of priesthood kept coming back. I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be a diocesan priest because I'm maybe not cut out for that. Maybe I should just be a religious brother. I went to visit different monasteries and different communities. I think my parents wondered, what is he going to do with his life? And
he's going to live in our basement forever,
exactly,
right?
And I was living in the basement. And so I met this religious community in Philadelphia. I went and I asked Father John Rader for some help to buy a plane ticket. I mean, I just think back at this now, all these priests who helped me. And I went, and then I said, well, I think I'll be a religious. Now, the young guys today talk about discernment like it's breathing air. Like, oh, I got to discern this. I don't know. I just said, well, that door closed, I'll go this way.
Right.
But one of the things you realize pretty quickly is if you're not called to it, you can grind it out, you can kind of will yourself through it. But I really wanted to be a parish priest.
Yeah.
That's what I longed for. And I really longed to be a priest in South Dakota in particular, this diocese.
Yeah.
So after a number of years with them, I went to the superiors. I just said, I can't honestly make solemn vows and be ordained because it's just, I don't think it's right.
Right.
I think it's like I'm being a fraud.
Right.
And so I called Rita Tebby, who was the secretary of the vocations office at that time, God rest her soul. And then Father Mason was the vocation director, and he said, well, come home. Come home. And then I met with Bishop Carlson, and Bishop Carlson said, well, I think we'll have you do a pastoral year. So
I'm being phased out again.
Phased out this way, yeah. So I did another pastoral year, this time with Father Griffin and Father Axman at Christ the King.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to work on the college campus of Augustana doing campus ministry, which was just a great experience. And eventually, at one point, Bishop Carlson said, I think we'll send you to Rome. I was like, oh, okay. And then he said, no, I think we'll send you to Mount St. Mary's, because we had used Mount St. Mary's in Emmitsburg, Maryland. And I was happy with that because my college years in Philadelphia and 1 year of theology out there would kind of align with that curriculum.
sure.
And I had friends that went from that seminary to that seminary. It's like, oh, that'll be great. I was really happy. And then that Easter, he changed his mind again. He said, I think we're going to send you to Denver. And he said, these are all opportunities for you to learn obedience or something rather pious. So I was like, but I did, and it was great.
Yeah.
Had a great formation out there, great intellectual formation, made lifelong friends, and then was ordained, and May the 25th, 2007.
Yeah.
So 18 years ago this coming May. I've served at our cathedral in Hunnemer first.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
And then a year later, I was made a pastor of Arlington, DeSmet, and Iroquois, Kingsbury County, the very county that my family came to settle, you know.
Amazing, isn't it, when that stuff happens?
And everybody kept asking, it's like, you know, the Stevens aren't Catholics. Like, how are you? And I'm like, well, but my mother is. So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there 3 years, and then out of the blue, Bishop Swain, God rest his soul, said, would you go to Sacred Heart? And I was like, you know, Parkston, Sacred Heart Eden.
Which one?
Aberdeen. Like, I was just in shock. I
Yeah.
couldn't believe it. And was there 4 years, and then they asked me to go to Mitchell, Holy Family in Mitchell.
Yeah.
And I was there, and then, and now
Oh, Del Rapids.
Del Rapids, and then back to Hunnemer. Hunnemer has been a theme in my priesthood all along. It just keeps coming back to me in some way, or I keep coming back to them.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was thinking about this interview, I was just thinking about all of the good priests who never gave up on me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't always get it right.
Right.
But I wasn't always in the wrong either.
Right.
But, you know, sometimes in the life of the church, it's not easy, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's difficult, and it stretches you and it pushes you. And a lot of times what happens to us in life isn't our fault,
Mm-hmm.
but how we respond to it is.
Yeah.
And so I look back at that now, and I see it all as a great gift. But, you know, it's like it's like Christmas morning, you're looking forward to opening the presents, and you open it up, and it's socks or it's underwear, and you go, really?
You're like,
I wanted this toy, or I wanted this whatever. It's like you don't appreciate it until later, and as you get older, you're like, oh, you know, new socks and underwear is a pretty good gift. I'll take that, you know.
I don't need anything else.
I don't need a toy, you know. And so in life, that's often the case. You know, what you perceive as not a gift really is.
Yeah.
And it gives you a mind and a heart and an empathy for folks.
Yeah.
That you just can't. It's all providential now, and I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah, the path isn't always straight, is it? Sometimes you're bumping into walls, and those priests were there to be like, okay, come back over here, and help you keep staying on the path.
You know, Father Simple and Father Wensing and Father Mark Lichter, and I could just, you know, Father Joe Vogel was at St. Michael's too, and Father John Hellmuller. One time I went and talked with him because he had been a religious with the Legionaries of Christ for a while before he came to our diocese, and just countless other opportunities that came my way. One thing I remember really well was I was in sophomore in high school. My sophomore year was really quite moving because I went to the seminary for the first time, but I also met this priest named Father Fox, Father Robert J. Fox, and I was a server at the cathedral. We had pontifical servers. I don't think we called them at that time, but we were the high school boys that helped with Chrism Mass and ordinations and stuff. And I was helping to rinse out one of the big urns that had the oil.
Yeah.
And the old sacristy used to be where the Sacred Heart Chapel is now. And I was hauling this soapy water outside to pour outside on the ground because you couldn't pour it in the drain. And I run into this priest, and he's like, "Are you a seminarian?" I said, "No." He said, "Would you like to go to Fatima?" It was a typical thing he would say. I didn't know what a Fatima was. And he gives me a business cards, you know, 'cause that's how it was in those days. And Mom found it in my shirt pocket, and she's like, "Do you need this?" And I'm like, "I don't know." I said, "It's a priest." He said, "You know, I don't even know who he was." He wanted me to know if I want to go to Fatima. And Mom was like, I think that ringed a bell with her, but she didn't really think about it until about a month later. We get this letter saying, "Congratulations, you've been gifted with a pilgrimage to Fatima. All expenses paid.
Wow.
All you needed was your little bit of spending money." And so I flew from Sioux Falls to St. Louis to New York to Lisbon, and I was with 30 other young men from around the United States. it changed my whole perspective on the church and the world, and was filled with graces.
Yeah, what a
those
great
days.
gift.
Yeah, those were amazing things. I think grace sometimes is, built up, and then it's used later. You don't always, again, appreciate it at the time, and as later you look back at it. But yeah, the thought of being a priest never left me.
Yeah.
And then the day of my ordination was, the cathedral was so full. I was ordained with Father Silverberg and Father Tom Anderson.
Oh, yeah.
And Father David Garza. There was the four of us. And so the church was absolutely packed. And I remember it being so hot.
Well,
There's no air conditioning in those days.
It is often hot on ordination day.
Yeah, and even now with air conditioning, it's still, it's like, how do you keep up? But it was a really happy day. And the thing that I remember, there was lots of things I remember about that day, but the procession in, when the whole congregation kind of is turning and looking at you, they probably shouldn't be. They should be focusing forward, but they're, it's like the bride
it's
coming down the aisle. And I saw face after face after face after face of people who had been so good to me and had prayed for me and had supported me.
Probably seemed like a long path at that point. Like, would I ever get here? And then there you are.
Yeah, I went into the
ordination.
seminary at 18 and I was ordained at 33.
Yeah.
So it seemed like a long time, but it was all worth it.
Yeah. What has been the biggest blessing for you as a priest?
Yeah. The biggest blessing is, there's been several times in my priesthood. Well, of course, obviously offering Mass is the supreme gift of the priesthood.
Is that your favorite part?
Yes,
Yeah.
I would say so. If I were to choose, I think the other one is the gift of the sacraments and reconciling people to God.
Yeah.
I have been blessed on more than one occasion to attend to someone who's dying, who has been away from the faith. They don't think there's any hope for them. They maybe don't even really want the priest there. They're embarrassed even at that point.
Sure.
And sometimes you just have to say, let me help you go to heaven.
Yeah.
And their eyes get big, and you go through the rites of the church with them, and then you see this peace and this joy come over their face, a sense of relief. That doesn't mean that there's not purgatory to come, but at least there's more hope than there was despair.
Right.
And then you see that in the life of the faces of the children, and they're just, the sacraments really aren't just for that one person. It is, but it also flows.
Yeah.
And seeks out. So the reconciliation of people to God and the church is probably the greatest joy. I remember one couple who were coming to Mass. They wanted a baptism of their child, and they were not married in the church. They were not coming up forward for communion. I kind of noticed this, but I don't go say, hey, what are you doing over here? And I said, they want this baby baptized. And I said, well, tell me about your marriage. Well, we're not married. Well, why? Well, the young woman she made her first communion, and then she kind of fell out of the faith. And the young man was from the reservation, Native American, didn't know who his dad was baptized, and that was it.
Right.
And I said, well, let me help you. And I remember the young man crying, and he said, I didn't think this was possible for us. I said, and with God, all things are possible. And so that was one couple that I personally instructed and got them to where they need to be, and then I got permission to confirm them, hear their confession, and confirm them the Saturday before their wedding in the church.
That's awesome.
And the rest of the children were baptized, and I pray God that they're still practicing the faith.
Yeah.
But, I mean, people really sometimes think that it's not possible. Or they think that the church has so many rules and so many regulations. Well, of course we do. You have to. But they're all meant to reconcile people back to God.
Yeah.
And your priests, this one, me in particular, but all my brothers, that's what we desire most, is to bring you back and to bring you back. Everything we have is meant to be shared. It's not some secret club.
Yes, for sure. So we're almost, that was so fast. Oh my gosh. Father, we're almost out of time. But I know that you have been very influenced by other priests to become a priest, but you have also influenced other young men to become priests. So if a young man came to you today and said, Father, I've maybe had in my head that maybe I want to be a priest, or you just see him, what do you say to them when that happens?
We kidnap them. We take them to the seminary as soon as possible, and hopefully they persevere. No, I ask the basic questions. I'll say, well, tell me a little bit about your interior life. Tell me a little bit about your prayer life. Tell me a little bit about your moral life. Not intrusively, but just kind of where are you at.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes will ask them, well, where did this idea first come from?
Yeah.
What kind of sparked it? Was it, something or someone? I tell them to go slow.
Mm-hmm.
I tell them not to be afraid. And if it's your vocation, God will give you the grace to sustain you.
Yeah.
I'm honest with them. It's not easy,
Mm-hmm.
but no vocation is easy.
No.
But this life is not forever. There's a life to come, and we have a part in that, in this life. And then our hope is in the life to come, the new heavens, the new earth, the
Yep.
coming of our Lord again in glory. That's
Yep.
what we hope for. We profess in the creed. So, and then I say it's never going to hurt you to give it a chance.
Right.
So I encourage them to go visit the seminary. I try to get them in contact with the vocation director, the vocations promoter. Maybe they'll go visit the propedeutic house. Maybe they'll participate in that process. But I say if you go for 1 year, 2 years, Archbishop Carlson used to say, sometimes the priests would say, well, we're spending all this money on seminarians and we're spending all this money on their education and they don't all get ordained.
That's okay.
That's okay.
They make great husbands.
They make great husbands. They can make great fathers. They
Yes.
can be great men for the church. It's an investment in them. It's a privileged investment in them. And they see that, especially those who don't continue. They often will say that, those were the best years of my life in terms of getting ready for being a father and a husband and a father. So, yeah, I would just tell them to take it slow, but be open to what's being prompted. God doesn't poke, doesn't invite unless he sees something. He knows that you have the abilities.
Yeah.
But then to be free too.
Yeah.
We don't want you to be, so tense and anxious about it.
Yeah, for sure.
And then a lot of times, the parish priests can confirm, say, Joseph, I do see that in you.
Yeah.
I see your attentiveness at Mass, your love for the Mass. I see how you work with people.
Mhm.
I see how you're so easy to share the faith. There's a certain normalcy, to you that's healthy and balanced. I could see this in you. This is good.
Yeah.
Sorry I didn't see it sooner.
Right.
Maybe should have invited you. So, that happens.
Yeah.
And sometimes, sadly, you have to say to a guy, I don't think this is a good fit for you.
Right.
But we'll leave it to the judgment of the bishop and the church and those in charge of formation.
Mhm.
All I can do is give you a heads up and a hand up if that's what
Right.
you should do. Good.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you pray for them, right?
And then you pray a lot for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've been so blessed. I've always, had vocations go. I don't know if it's my influence per se, but certainly I've encouraged vocations.
Yeah.
I've called guys to vocation. I think that's what I should do as a priest
sure.
and as a pastor. But then, it's like, I'm here, I'm supporting you, but you go through this process and the church will figure it out.
Yeah.
And then the happy day your name is, called in the cathedral, then
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Father, thank you so much
You're so
for
welcome.
telling us your story. I want to encourage all of your parishioners, all the people in the diocese to pray for you
Thank you.
as a priest, because
you.
our priests need that
Yeah.
very much.
Sure.
So and I hope you'll let us know when you need things.
I trust
And prayer.
trust in the goodwill and the prayers of our
Yeah.
people, as all priests
Yeah.
should. We're not in it alone.
Yeah.
And the joy of being a priest joy doesn't always make it easy.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's a good life.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
I'm going to leave it there.
Okay.
That's a great way to end it. Thanks,
you.
Father Stevens.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Renee.
All right. That's it for us today. Hope you'll join us again next week for more Catholic Views.